I want to bring in my guest, though. I am joined with the man himself. He is one of my favorites, one of my audience favorites, Laith Marouf. Laith Marouf, come on. There we are. Laith Marouf is an award-winning multimedia producer, media policy law consultant focused on issues of liberation and decolonization from indigenous nations to Arab peoples and building broadcasting capabilities for misrepresented, underrepresented communities around the world. You can find his work at Free Palestine TV, or I think on Twitter it's TV Free Palestine, but if you put in Free Palestine TV, you can find it. Laith, man, how you doing today? You doing all right?
Doing good, thank you very much.
And I just want to make sure, did I get that right? Because I always see you on Twitter, and Twitter is usually the thing, it's my outlet for social media. And on Twitter, I think it's at TV Free Palestine.
Yes, Free Palestine TV wasn't available. It seems some Zionist is holding it. So you gotta go around it, and we're on Instagram at free.palestine.tv and on YouTube at TV Free Palestine. And the website is freepalestine.video for anybody that wants to find all the links, freepalestine.video, and if you'd like to donate.
Excellent. And audience, is the sound quality okay? I want to make sure you guys can hear me all right. And I'll let them tell me as I play your clip. I was looking at the clip that you put up. So I am in Malaysia and they're celebrating Eid. I think it's Al-Ahar. Is that right? What's the
Adha.
Thank you. So we're celebrating it here too. And what you ended up with is Israel deciding to go on attacks pretty much the day before all of those people were going to be in Lebanon. And I want to get your take on why. So this is the clip that you put up, and I want to play a part of this clip, and I want to get your take on what was going on, because you was there. You actually went to the location of that bombing. Man, when I say you're doing God's work, you're doing God's work. This is...
Luckily, nobody has been martyred last night, but we know also that the Lebanese army attempted to go into these buildings after the Zionists claimed that some Hezbollah weapons and centers are in these buildings. And as they were entering, they were targeted by a missile, a warning missile as they call it, by the Zionists, which forced the Lebanese military to run away. And we can understand two things from this, is that the Israelis don't want anyone to prove their lies. And the second is that the Lebanese military have really no control of the use of force on Lebanese territory.
I am fascinated by that. Explain that to us. So just to get this right, Israel said Hezbollah is apparently in Lebanon setting up for something. The Lebanese military goes to inspect to see, okay, is it true? Israel attacks the Lebanese army, calling them to fall back. And your point is, well, they attacked them because they didn't want them to check to verify their lies. Explain this to us. What is going on here with this?
Yeah, so the Israelis announced that they were going to attack 8 different buildings in the southern suburb of Beirut in 3 different neighborhoods. And, once they made that declaration, the Lebanese military moved in because the Israelis claimed that Hezbollah has drone building facilities, manufacturing facilities in these buildings. And the Lebanese military moved in to inspect. And as they did, they were targeted by this drone missile just as a quote-unquote warning, and they had to leave the buildings. This also, remember, happened a few months ago when the Israelis claimed that one of the major hospitals in the south suburb of Beirut had an underground infrastructure that included all the treasury of Hezbollah, where all its gold and money is. And the Lebanese military at that time rushed in, and the Minister of Health with international media, and inspected every room in the hospital. And the media was allowed to go into every room and open anything they want to. And they proved that, of course, the Zionists were lying, and thus the Israelis had to stop their attack. So this time, the Zionists didn't want anyone to see the reality on the ground and wanted to just destroy more civilian infrastructures. Mainly all these buildings that were attacked this time, actually all of them, every one of those buildings that were attacked 2 nights ago, were untouched during the war. So these were some of the few buildings that had, their foundations still intact, and people were living in them. So now all the blocks around these buildings have been evacuated because they were damaged. Also, the foundations of the buildings around those targeted. So you can only think about it as a collective punishment, and done on the eve of the Eid, to just sow panic and terror in the population of Lebanon.
Just to be clear, there was no rational reason for it. It was just bile, just hatred.
Yes, this is total hatred. And I think, part of it was also because the day before, the foreign affairs minister of Iran arrived in Lebanon, met with the Lebanese officials, offered money for reconstruction of Lebanon, and then had a meeting with the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sheikh Al-Qasim right now. And so that probably, angered the Zionists, and they wanted to punish all of Lebanon for this visit by the Iranian foreign minister, and that he dared to meet with the Secretary General of Hezbollah.
Explain to me, how does Hezbollah, forgive me, Lebanon is a bit confusing to me. Lebanon has a Lebanese military, but as you pointed out at the video, they have no control over the use of force in Lebanon. That ultimately, you have a military that doesn't defend the borders of the country.
Yeah, so the blockade and siege on Lebanon, the Western powers are not allowing the Lebanese military to have any capabilities that are defensive, air defense systems, and border control systems and what have you, no tanks. And so what does that mean? That means that the Lebanese military, its equipment are really a police force equipment. A few armored vehicles, and just medium and small caliber weaponry. There's nothing there that they can confront a invading army with. So the West wants them to have the maximum capability of confronting their own people. That's the only thing that they're allowed to have. And, this means that, as we saw since 1942, and even before the creation of the Zionist colony, there was constant invasions by Israeli colonists in the south of Lebanon, and constantly the residents, the civilians in the south of Lebanon, would have to pick up arms by themselves and defend themselves. And that's how, over the last 80 somewhat years, there's been waves after waves of different resistance groups rising because of that reality.
Is the goal of Israel to take part of Lebanon? Is that what the objective in all of this is?
Yeah, I mean, their most important objective in Lebanon is capturing the watershed of the Golan Heights. South of Lebanon, all of it, the water is coming from the Golan, including the Beqa' Valley in the heart of Lebanon is fed through the watersheds from the Golan Heights. The Israelis already captured the Syrian side of that with their occupation over since January. Now they control all the Yarmouk River basin in the south of Syria. They, with the British, bought from the French with bags of money in 1930 the whole Hula Valley. So between the two world wars, the Zionists and the British pressured the French, who were occupying what is now North Palestine, and changed the border of the mandate to include what is now called the north of Palestine and the Hula Valley, that were supposed to be part of Lebanon. And so that means right now the only out of the four sides of the Golan Heights and their watershed, the only part that the Israelis don't control is the one that is in South Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley. So if once they control this, the rest of the region doesn't have water.
Wow. Just wow. I want to move to another topic real quick. And one more thing, but on this. When you went there, was there anything that surprised you on the ground and the people that you talked to, and anything that you've seen, something that we should be aware of that we may not know just from looking at the attacks?
Yeah, the attacks were concentrated on three areas and three neighborhoods in the south suburb, and two of the attacks were right beside mosques, and the complexes of those mosques were all damaged, the glass and everything. And one of them was right across from the major vocational school for disability communities in Lebanon. This is a college, and a vocational school that rehabilitates people with disabilities, gives them, credentials and jobs and so forth. And this is the largest one in the country. And the school campus is practically destroyed. All the windows, the equipment inside for the training sessions and laboratories for hotel services, restaurants, sewing and all of those crafts and so on. Everything is destroyed. So now the disabilities communities in Lebanon are left with no educational avenues until this college is fixed up.
Who fixes those things? When Israel goes on a killing spree and blows up buildings in Palestine, I guess they don't rebuild them because there's no money to rebuild them. But in Lebanon, there is at least a state. Does the state put money into that? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, when that damage takes place, who repairs the buildings? Who fixes the mosque? Who fixes the schools? Who pays for it?
Yeah, up until now, historically, it's been the resistance doing this. So we know in 2006, the resistance, Hezbollah was able to raise funds from various parts of the world, including Iran, enough to, within 1 month of the end of the war in 2006, to begin rebuilding everything. And at that time, the Lebanese government, basically, which is a corrupt institution, went ahead and took all these EU and World Bank loans to supposedly rebuild the country, and none of that money made it to the reconstruction efforts. It was all pocketed by different corrupt leaders. And today, we have a problem here because neither the IMF or EU wants to give money for the rebuilding, and the Israelis and Americans are barring the entry of any donations. So they threatened to down Iranian civilian flights that were coming and Iraqi civilian flights that were coming with money, civilians bringing money and donating it to rebuilding the country. And that meant all those flights are stopped. And now any flight that's coming from Iran has to be on the Middle East Air, which is the Lebanese, airline. And they're all searched and no money is allowed to come into the country. So the Lebanese elite are collaborating, the government is collaborating with the siege against donations and finances to rebuild Lebanon. And none of the even corrupt funds that could have, like the EU and IMF, are willing to give funds currently until basically they want the defeat of Hezbollah. And they can only see that through the hampering of the rebuilding and thus leaving people out in the streets and impoverished. And eventually they hope, the West and Israel hopes that will encourage people to rebel against Hezbollah's resistance strategy.
That is astonishing. So they allow Israel to effectively break the deal and the agreement, which they always do. Israel comes in and does bombings and destroys all sorts of property. And then they put a blockade to prevent any money to come into rebuilding. So Israel can just keep doing this. and there will be no money coming in because Europe and America effectively backs them doing it. That is astonishing. That is amazing. Leif, I also want to get your take on something else. So it was revealed, I mean, I think people knew this, but it became clear that Israel was paying for gangs in effectively proxies, ISIS-linked gangs in Gaza. One of the leaders of those gangs is this guy. Trump would probably call him a good-looking guy, knowing Trump, holding the gun with, I think this is a UAE license plate. I think that's a UAE license plate. His name is Abu Shabab, and he is one of the people who apparently works for Israel as this kind of proxy force in Gaza. And it has been known at this point that they've been stealing food, killing people, supposedly under the auspices of going after Hamas. Netanyahu, after being confronted with this information, had to come out and admit, yes, we are paying these people to do that. He recently came out for an interview, of all things, and he called on international humanitarian aid, despite the fact that their gangs have been stealing it. He tried to distance himself from Israel, effectively saying he's going to take more territory from Hamas. And he requested more money, more weapons for new volunteers. That is amazing. Give me your take on this. I mean, this has been something that people have been talking about for a while. It has been confirmed at this point.
Yeah, so the Abu Shabab,
yeah,
the Abu Shabab gang, obviously it's an offshoot of ISIS, and it's being coordinated, its efforts, by the Palestinian Authority security forces and the Zionists together. So this is, again, Mahmoud Abbas, with ISIS, with the Israelis fighting the resistance.
Just wow.
And, you gotta, extrapolate from all of this, that how long has this been going on? And how many mercenaries have actually fought on the battlefield of Gaza over the last 20 some months? So in my personal opinion, there's been tens of thousands of mercenaries that entered the battlefield since day one. This includes all these ISIS-like fighters and most probably Ukrainians, most probably all the special forces of the West. And, if we think about it, if the Israelis are admitting they have 15,000 dead soldiers, this is an admittance from the minister and the leader of the military in Israel, how many mercenaries like these ISIS Abu Shabab gang have died? If 15,000, Zionist soldiers, which are going to be the third line, and in front of them some cannon fodder died, it must be in the tens of thousands.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah. So this is an attestation of the bravery and proficiency of Palestinian resistance fighters, that they've taken on these hordes for 20 months and they're still holding them at bay. And that, today, as the things are becoming clearer and clearer for everybody, and things are being revealed because of the length of the battle, it's harder and harder to hide things as the battle continues. As the stresses are clear to everybody about the Israeli military, how stressed it is, and the Western supply chain and all of that. So now we're getting to the point where it's becoming impossible to hide these realities. And, we look at this as, and the revelation of it as, I think, a good thing. Obviously the involvement of ISIS is not good, but it shows you also that the connections between ISIS, HTS, Al-Qaeda, even in Syria, it reaffirms that the Battle of Syria was a battle to take down a state that was in support of Palestinian resistance. And I would add one more thing. Today there was revealed that Ahmad Jibril, the leader of the PFLP General Command, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, who was dead a while ago, who's buried in Damascus, in Yarmouk refugee camp, who's one of the most important military leaders. His Galilee operation led to the largest release of Palestinian prisoners up until this war. 1,000 Palestinian prisoners at the time were released, including the founder of Hamas, Ahmed Yassin, the quadriplegic founder of Hamas, and the current leader of Islamic Jihad. And his grave was dug out by HTS ISIS today in Yarmouk refugee camp. They desecrated his grave, pull out his remains and scattered them. Okay, this shows you, what it is, this relationship between Wahhabism and the death squads of Wahhabism and Zionism and the death squads of Zionism and white supremacy and imperialism. This is all now revealed for anybody that wants to understand, that was fooled somehow over the last 15 years with the war in Syria.
I think the people need to also put it in context, right? Israel has been using and paying for gangs, or let's say groups, in order to destabilize Gaza for decades at this point. If you remember, one of the reveals was that Israel was funding and paying for Hamas in the very beginning. And they were doing it only because they wanted to create a division between the PLO and Gaza, basically the West Bank and Gaza. And in their minds, we can fund this group and we can deal with that group as opposed to a united front. And now it feels like they're doing something similar with these mercenaries. We're going to effectively use mercenaries in order to false flags, to go after food and humanitarian assistance, to blame Hamas for it. Like, meaning, without anybody knowing that the group was working at the behest of Israel, Israel could blame Hamas for everything that effectively took place in Gaza, whether it was true or made sense or not. They could just say, well, Hamas took the food. Hamas fired these shots off. Hamas did this, Hamas did that. When it come to find out, it was Israel funding these guys. Or, as you point out, the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas and Israel working in tandem, effectively going against Palestinian resistance while simultaneously slaughtering all of these people at the same. That is astonishing. Like, and you're right, the same thing is true in Syria, where I guess my point is, that's a hell of a reveal to say that, yeah, we have our own groups also working in Gaza, going against Hamas, and to be proud of it. He's like, yeah, we're doing it. What's the issue? And people are like, are you out of your mind? What are you talking about? What's the issue? It's a big issue. Give me a take on that. I mean, these destabilization campaigns, whether it's what's in Syria with Obama putting in billions of dollars. I mean, you could say that the U.S. is effectively paying for this also, considering we're paying 80% of what Israel does. We give them billions of dollars a year. That money is going into this. I'm amazed by this. And amazed is the wrong word for it. It's just disturbing. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, like Israeli politician Avigdor Lieberman, who's, another fascist. He's the one that outed this story of, whatever his name is, Abu Shabab. They love making up these names, being paid and armed by the Zionist military to do this dirty work. And that prompted Netanyahu to admit it, because he's not going to lie once Avigdor Lieberman, his former ally, speaks like this. Yeah. And Avigdor Lieberman was saying this not because he was, not happy that ISIS is on the payroll, but he was saying this as an example of how weak the Israeli military currently is and how overexhausted it is. And so the reason that, so Netanyahu responded in being frank about it, not to say, oh yeah, you're right, we made this. He's saying it, oh well, yes, we're doing this to lift some stress off the special forces of Israel, who are every time they're facing off with Hamas, are getting
Dying.
clobbered.
Yeah.
So, the revelation and the response of Netanyahu was all directed towards the emotions of the Israelis about the health of their military. Okay, and as we can tell, I think we can, from both of these statements, from Lieberman and Netanyahu, we can clearly see that the Israeli military is reaching its limits, and having it engaged in a war like this for so long is putting a lot of stress on the internal balances in the military. And this also carries into the conflict that is happening right now about recruiting the Haredim,
Right.
the religious and Zionist Jews, into the military, which is now triggering the collapse of the Israeli Knesset and a call for an election. So all of those are important revelations that make us understand between the lines of these statements that the Israeli military is in a really bad shape right now.
Yeah, they seem to be at their wits' end. The amount of reservists not showing up, the amount of people who apparently having PTSD, and that doesn't even get to the economy. Eliat port shut down because of Yemen effectively putting a blockade. I would imagine air flights in Ben Gurion also suffering because the air blockade. So they're not getting out of this scot-free. And I think your point is they wouldn't use these guys if they didn't have to. They're using them because the military is at its wits' end.
Yeah, and they wouldn't be so public about it. They have been using these ISIS mercenaries for a while now, but for them to take such a front line in front of the camera position, including that Gaza humanitarian whatever group, that means that they had no choice but to put them in front of the cameras. It's impossible now to hide them. There's not enough Israeli soldiers to make the battlefield look like it's mainly populated by them. Now it's very clear, so let's talk about it openly, and let's do it openly.
One last subject. Al-Jilani, the head chopper that is calling himself president of Syria, he is apparently going to the UN to make a speech. They have removed, well, wait a minute, real quick. UAE. This guy had UAE license plates. So what does that mean? The UAE is also putting money into this escapade that is taking place with these gangs?
Yes, definitely. The United Arab Emirates has been the operator and the financer of many of these armed gangs around the whole region, not only in Gaza. And it's part of its, rivalry with Qatar and Turkey, and even with Saudi, about who controls more of these Wahhabi death squad assets and who can provide more services to master in the White House out of this group. And so we see the Emiratis arming and financing the separationists, the secessionists in Somalia, in Somaliland, and taking over the port there and building radars for Israel to be able to look into Yemen and monitor the firing of missiles and drones from Yemen. Similarly, we see what's happening in Sudan. United Arab Emirates is the main financer of the rapid response forces that have been committing all these crimes and looting all the gold and cattle and minerals of northwest Sudan. And that's all going through the ports of Libya and the borders with Chad and Libya. And so the United Arab Emirates is becoming kind of the number one most openly active financer, mover, and operator of Wahhabi death squads around the region. And, it goes back with the issue of Gaza specifically. goes back to the 2005 elections in the West, in Palestine, when the Emiratis and the Israelis wanted Mahmoud Dahlan, the military ruler of Gaza at the time, on behalf of Fatah, to take over after Hamas won the election. They prompted him to do an invasion and try to kill the Hamas and take over Gaza. And he was defeated at the time by Hamas and the other Islamic and resistance groups in Gaza, and was expelled, and he ran away to the Emirates. And they've been building him up as the replacement for Mahmoud Abbas if Mahmoud Abbas dies. So the Emirates wants to be the number one provider of services for the Zionists in order to have control of who is going to rule Gaza and kind of maneuver the Qataris or the Turks or the Egyptians on having influence over who's going to rule Gaza.
How do you think this ends? And what I mean by that is, it seems that they're either going to have to kill every last man, woman, child, dog, cat, everything, in order to take it over. And it seems that blowing up everything is a prelude to ensure that no one has anything to go back to, because everything is destroyed. So there are no hospitals, there are no schools, there are no, apartment buildings, there are no, effectively all the residential buildings, maybe 80, 90% are effectively gone. And when starving people are coming for food, those people are getting shot at over and over and over again. Every time, every day, there's been a massacre at those food distribution centers and the concentration camps that the United States and Israel has effectively set up. How does this end? I don't know. I don't see how this stops.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the responsibilities of either people that call themselves anti-Zionist Jewish, and or the responsibility of citizens in the West, to end this genocide somehow. Clearly, the military confrontation with the Zionist colony over the last 2 years, almost, by the axis of resistance has not stopped the genocide.
Right.
And I don't see any major military intervention coming from any other players other than the axis of resistance to end this genocide. But I personally think that this genocide is going to continue until there is no more Israel, as much as there's going to be no more Palestinians. Okay, and we can see how those things that I was talking about, the responsibility of anti-Zionist Jews and the responsibility of Western citizens, are naturally coming to the forefront. I've been crying about it for 1.5 years, but the realities on the ground are forcing, as we see, more radical actions to be taken.
Yeah.
And that's natural. And one of those things we saw, this Flotilla boat attempting to breach the siege on Gaza yesterday, with Greta Thunberg and other activists on it. I want to say, obviously, I wish them safety and that they get back home safely. But I do have criticism for this boat situation. Number one, I was involved in the original Mava Marmara boat that was sent in 2009, and that ended up with all those people being killed by the Israelis. And that was the last time I was involved in these boats to Gaza, because, as Einstein would say, the definition of insanity is repeating the same experiment over and over and expecting a different result. And it was very clear from that point on that any boat that's going to be sent to Gaza is going to be confiscated, pirated, and all the goods actually are going to end up in Israel, and all the activists are going to get full cavity searches, okay, and humiliation. So to try to do it one more time and to expect something different That was insane. There was a friend of mine a few days ago that prompted DeepSeek, the AI, to give him scenarios, and grade those scenarios about what's going to happen to the Medellin boat, and grade them, those scenarios, for how good they are for the Palestinian cause. Okay. And, this is a friend of mine that has nothing to do with activism, but just decided he's going to do that.
Mhm.
And obviously, DeepSeek told him the best case scenario is that Greta Thunberg gets killed by
Yes.
the Israelis. Okay, that will
You know what's
prompt.
funny? I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I was about to say the same thing. Like that, the entire, whether people realize it or not, the flotilla, the point of it is to be sunk. I don't know if Greta Thunberg understands that, but the
Yeah.
entire point of it is you're putting your body on the line. You're putting your life on the line for bigger cause. It's not about them giving you bread when they board the flotilla. I'm sorry, please continue.
Yes,
But
and the worst case scenario for the Palestinian cause is that the boat gets, taken over non-violently by the Israelis, and they have a propaganda moment of that, feeding them, giving them the water. And you
which is what
saw
happened.
clearly what the
Yep.
media would do in the West, calling it the selfie boat, Greta's selfie boat, or stuff like this.
Yeah.
DeepSeek told us weeks ago this, and the neutral kind of situation was that the boat reaches Gaza and distributes. Imagine, that's not going to be as good as the whole boat sinking and Greta dying there. So I'm saying this because anyone that was involved in preparing this should have thought of the scenarios if they didn't want to ask an AI. They're supposed to be strategists, activists that are thinking about how do we do something. So for me, I realized, what is it, 2008, so 14 years ago, that this is not good to repeat. And it was clear to me from then that the weakest link in the siege of Gaza is Egypt and the Egyptian military. And they should have directed their boat to go into Egyptian waters, not stay in international waters, and land in Rafah, Sina, Egypt, not Rafah, Gaza. Park there, bring down the stuff, and attempt to go through the border and let the Egyptian military beat you and kill you. Okay?
Yeah.
That would put pressure on the weak Egyptian state that is already, its population, 100 million, 120 million Egyptians are like broiling at the under the surface, their emotions. They're just scared to be killed. When they would have seen international activists getting beaten, confronting, fighting to enter into Gaza, that would have triggered the Egyptian population to rise. That would have triggered Egyptian soldiers to stop being self-humiliating and think about what they're doing as Egyptian soldiers. And so I personally think it's a waste of money, this whole Free Gaza flotilla. There's better ways to do this. And today there is a caravan of aid and activists coming all the way from Algeria to Gaza. It was
Right.
supposed to meet at the same time with this flotilla, and I don't understand why they went before them. You see, none of this makes sense to me from an organization point of view. And the only problem I would say about this caravan coming all the way from Algeria, Tunis to Gaza is it's populated by Arabs. Do you think the Egyptian government will care about killing massively all these activists, Arabs from Algeria and Tunis? Do you think the international media will give a damn if they're killed on the borders of Gaza? Do you think the Israeli military will, for a second stop itself from killing them if they attempt to cross? Where are these Jewish anti-Zionists? Where are those Western people that are objecting to the genocide? Come to the border. Put yourself in this situation on Gaza. Don't let Arabs get killed for no reason again. This is all of these seems to me
Oh, that's such a good point.
to be amateur.
Well, they are.
amateur.
They're just kids. I mean, at least the Flotilla, they're just kids. Like, I don't think they're looking at this in the way that you are. I mean, you've been soaked into this. You've been thinking about this for years. These guys are more like, oh my God, this is horrible. I want to do something. Oh, I know, let's do a flotilla and let's dare Israel to sink us. Missing the point that if they don't sink you and they're nice to you, you've just become a propaganda campaign. Oh, that's such a good point, Laith. I am curious on something else. The documents that were apparently released by Iran, and in those documents, it pointed out that Israel was trying to overthrow the Egyptian government to put somebody in who was more favorable to Israel. Now, I don't know why you would need to do that. Egypt, is basically a quizzling of the U.S. government. They've done pretty much anything that the U.S. told them to do. But what do you make of these documents? I guess I have two questions. How much time do I have? Okay. Let me ask the secondary question first. Saudi Arabia is supposed to be more amenable to Iran. And with this whole nuclear thing, Iran was pretty clear. Look, we're not giving up our enrichment. Go F yourself. We're not doing that. And one of the things that the U.S. wanted was effectively, okay, well, what if you work in a consortium with UAE, Saudi Arabia, and we would give you your fuel. Now, again, this is fool's errand. Iran's not stupid enough to be dependent upon the United States for fuel. What is the relationship between Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran? I mean, they're acting as if we've mended fences. And I got to be honest, I'm very distrustful of this relationship. But give me your take on it. You know it better than I would.
So the first question about Egypt, the Zionists want to destroy forever, fragment forever every Arabic state and destroy all their militaries. Egypt, although was part of the Arab Autumn plot, did not fracture. Its military still stands. All their equipment are there, their training programs, everything, right? So even though that there is a vassal in power in Egypt, that is not sufficient enough.
It's not enough. They still want to destroy it.
They fear the day that some actually patriot gets into power in Egypt with the backing of 120 million people and a big army, So no, they want to fracture it. They're probably going to start, you'll see over the next decade talking about the Nubians' rights in Egypt. or people in Sina being marginalized, or people on the border of Libya, some tribe feels marginalized, and so things are gonna. This is what Israel wants. They wants to do that with every Arabic country. All of them should not have an army with any defensive capabilities, no matter what, no matter who's in charge. They need another Jolani in every Arabic country that breaks up the country on their behalf.
Would that work in Egypt, by the way, before you move on to the next answer?
I think it's very hard for them to do that because, Egypt has a history of battle between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Egyptian state.
Right.
That goes way back all the way to British occupation time. And there's, best moment they had, it was that moment of the Arab Autumn. And you saw that didn't last 9 months. The government of, what's his name, not Sisi, before him, the Muslim Brotherhood.
Morsi.
Right? That lasted 9 months. Yeah. And that's, because of the military refusing to be ruled by a fanatic Muslim Brotherhood guy.
Good point.
So as long as the military exists, it's the backbone of society in all the way to the pharaohs. Okay, this is the thing about Egyptian society, and it's the closest thing that you can think about as Indian. What is it called? The sects that they have in India, not sects, where classes that are socially.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it'll come to me. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a stature for state and the strong man of the state in Egypt that goes back thousands, tens of thousands of years. that is unique in the Arabic world and makes it that it's hard to do something like what the Israelis want. In terms of the UAE and Saudi Arabia, Iran is following the maxim of keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right?
Yeah.
So it's and the United Arab Emirates provide the only kind of banking window for Iran. So they will play this game with Iran and Saudi Arabia, especially that all the other Arabic competition, like Syria, Iraq, all of those countries are off the map now. So they can only depend on keeping those enemies close.
The caste system. My audience can't be the caste system. Yeah, that word would not come to me. Morsi immediately, but caste system, not so much. No, you're right about that, though. I mean, Egypt, it's almost like the military is guarantor of the state. And regardless of who the leader is, the military is a thing unto itself. It's like it has a responsibility. But they have not. Is it just the leadership has put shackles on the military? I mean, from my understanding, in all of these Arab countries, there's an anger at what is happening. But that anger is not being expressed in any real way that would be a hedge against what Israel is doing. It's almost like the leadership is preventing any, let's say, righteous indignation to be expressed materially, physically, in real terms. And the same thing is true for Egypt. And these countries have fought wars against Israel, but not anymore. I mean, what is it that Israel, and this will be the last question, what is the hedge for Egypt? Is it that the U.S. gives it money? Is it that it's worried about destabilization from the U.S.? What are they scared of in this?
Yeah, there's two things. Number one is everybody has watched over the last 30 years Arabic republics being invaded by Western powers, and at the same time, hordes of Wahhabi death squads, allowed to rape and pillage
The countries.
whole nations.
Yeah.
And that's very, very demoralizing, and it's also very scary. Nobody wants their daughters and sons to be raped at mass. And this is part of the psychological warfare of, creating Daesh, ISIS, and all that Hollywood media productions of Daesh, of, head chopping and rape videos and all of those that were distributed at mass by Western media and social media on purpose. And so there's that. People look at what happened in Syria now, it's even fresher. And the fact that not anymore even is there a hint of objection in Western media to the mass rape of the Syrian population and the mass killing, right? At least in the Iraq era of ISIS, we had like crocodile tears about the minorities of Iraq and the women of Iraq and the children of Iraq. Now we have none of that for the people of Syria.
Call them liberators.
So imagine yourself an Egyptian, and you're like, oh, goddamn, we are the last, other than Algeria, the last Arab republic that hasn't been, taken down and mass raped by Saudi Wahhabi death squads. I mean, mostly like 80% of these Wahhabi death squads are Saudi citizens. Okay, so it's that's something we cannot, belittle as a factor in what's happening in people's minds. And look at what happened in Jordan. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of political prisoners currently since the beginning of Al-Aqsa flood and the genocide in Gaza. Nobody's talking about them, not even any coverage. And what will happen to Saudi citizens if they did something? They know they're not going to get raped by the Wahhabi death squads in the streets, and they're going to get raped in jail by the Saudi security forces. So, and nobody's going to care about in the Western media and in the Western populace. So there is those things I am for revolution, but I understand what the regular man and woman are thinking in
Yeah.
countries like this, and I don't begrudge them these choices.
Jesus, Laith. Laith Marouf. I feel culpable. That's all. Like, it's my government that's
We're
doing this.
all
We're sending,
culpable, you know. We live in this global empire,
yeah,
and
no, but we pay
televised
for it. I mean, we
genocide.
literally put money down for it. Like, we print money out of thin air in order to help these governments do this stuff. It's just disgusting. Laith Marouf. He is an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy consultant focused on issues of liberation and decolonization from indigenous nations to Arab peoples and building broadcasting capabilities for misrepresented and underrepresented communities around the world. You can find him at TV, Free Palestine. That's on YouTube. Free Palestine TV.video. If you want to find him online, he has great videos. He's on the ground covering all of this stuff. And again, please be safe.
Thank you. See you soon.
Have a good one, man. All right. That is a fantastic breakdown by Laith. As